You are listening to KC Sports Network, the #1 podcast network for today's Kansas City sports fans. With former players from your favorite teams, informed perspectives, and former insiders, this is the place for you. KC Sports Network is proudly presented by Emprise Bank, your partner in possible.
Hello and welcome into this week's edition of Mizzou That's Who here on the KC Sports Network. Mizzou coming off of a homecoming victory over the Vanderbilt Commodores, 17-14. Never in doubt. Always thought that the Tigers were going to pull this one out on homecoming. I'm joined as always by Gabe DeArmond and Maggie Johnson. Gabe, was it clear I was being sarcastic?
It was. Instead of me talking, can you just play the Rosie Perez clip from White Men Can't Jump over and over? You know, like sometimes when you lose, you really win. And sometimes when you win, you really lose.
Yeah, I think that's a very appropriate synopsis, you could say, of this game. I was in attendance. Maggie, you were also in attendance. Thoughts on the game? I thought that was a good crowd.
I thought the crowd was great. I think we hit 97% capacity, somewhere around 60,000, 62. I don't know, somewhere in there. So yeah, no issues with the crowd, except it was apparently gold rush, and I think everybody missed the memo. Really the only crowd issues that I had there. But homecoming was great. I did the parade. I tailgated. I did house decks the night before, so I really did the whole shebang. It's sad that I'm even saying this. The biggest letdown was us winning the game. Everything else was great, but I thought the worst case scenario would be us losing, which it still was. But the second worst case scenario is winning by a field goal.
I had a lot of people ask me prior to the game. They said, Tucker, Mizzou favored by 14 points. You gonna hit that Mizzou spread? And I said, absolutely not. Do not, stay away. This team cannot beat any team by 14 points. I don't care if it's the Kansas School of the Blind. They're not going to beat any team by 14 points. But no, I thought homecoming was great. I heard the parade was long. I heard the parade was like an hour and a half.
Really long.
Like that.
Well, they have like 12 high school bands thrown in there too. So I mean do it. And I mean, however many sorority houses there are, it is a lot. And it's political season, so there was also a lot of political floats, and I'm just like, come on. Like, I don't care.
Why do people like parades though?
I
don't get it. We went when Missouri played in the Cotton Bowl, we went to the Cotton Bowl parade, and my kids were 5 and 10. And like there were adults bumping them out of the way to get to the front row of the Cotton Bowl. I'm like, you have a terrible existence. It's just a bunch of cars and vans walking by. They don't even throw out candy a lot of times.
Well, they had I went with my friend and her daughter, and then like her husband and their son was in it because he plays for the Columbia Youth Football League. So we went there, and the daughter loved it. I mean, we got coffee and we chatted, and it was great. And it was I don't love parades either. That's actually only the second time I've ever been to the homecoming parade. The first time I was there, I had to be there for my sorority back in school. I've never went either. So I was like, okay, it wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. But there were a lot more adults probably than kids.
Yeah, I was told. So I didn't get into town until Saturday morning. It was after the parade got done. It was probably around like 11:30 when I got into town. I was worried about traffic. Because I was like, man, when I went to Manhattan, game day traffic burned me. So I was like, I'm not going to get burned again by game day traffic. But everybody must have came down.
You almost did on the way home.
I did almost
got literally burned.
I literally almost got burnt. And the only thing that saved me is I stopped at Shakespeare's Pizza and had to wait an hour and a half for a pizza. Which like, I'm okay waiting an hour and a half for Shakespeare's Pizza. Right. I'll do that. And it was good just to kind of sit there. Maybe sober up a little bit as I'm sitting there watching South Carolina play Texas A&M in the weirdest game of all time. But I'm sure you guys didn't tune into this podcast to hear how our Saturdays went. Maybe. You know what? I don't want to speak too soon because this football team has not provided the most entertaining content to A, watch, or B, talk about. I think we should start with this Missouri offense. And I was telling you guys this before the podcast. The screen that Luther Burden scored on, once he scored, I was like, yes, that's what you have to do. Do that more. Run that touchdown play more. And it seemed like one of those things where it's like, it seems like I'm pretty good at this. It seems like they should hire me to do this. But I don't know. The first Luther Burden score was exhilarating. I was in that south end zone, so he came towards me. It was just basically ran right towards me. So it was a very exhilarating experience to see Luther Burden score a touchdown. But overall thoughts on the offense, hasn't gotten any better. I'll say that.
No, the first half, they looked competent. I didn't think they looked great, but
Right.
I don't have the stats in front of me anymore, but they were a little bit under like halfway to what Vanderbilt's season averages are. They're giving up like 40 points and I don't know, 400 and some odd yards a game. And Missouri had a little less than half of that. So we said last week the barometer was 30 points, right? If you can't get to 30 this week, your offense is broken. This offense, I mean, that second half, that was worse to me than the second and third quarter at Auburn when I just watched punts over and over and over because it was almost two offenses actively trying to lose a game. At least at Auburn, they were just punting. Here, it was like, oh, we're up 17, but we don't want to win. Will you please win? No, we also don't want to win because we're trying to get 14th in the SEC because we get the number 1 draft pick then, right?
So much.
I mean, 4 turnovers, and granted,
people keep saying 4. I don't remember 4. Were there 4?
I thought there were 4. Weren't there 4?
There was the kickoff that was like weird that Missouri never got the ball.
Oh my god!
So I don't know if that counts as a 4th one. Whatever. There were a lot. I feel like
if you're not
3, 4, whatever.
If you go from offense to not offense, I count it as a turnover.
Yeah,
fair.
But I mean, Holy Toledo, it was so bad, and I'm just like, at that one point, it was the sack, and then immediately it was wasn't it pretty quick after the sack touchdown that they got the
It was, I think, the ensuing kickoff.
Back on, back to back.
Because I wasn't even I didn't see the kickoff until the replay because I wasn't looking.
Right. It was, because it went too quickly. And it was just, you're just sitting there like, what is happening? It was like an out-of-body experience almost. Like, I don't even have words. It was so bad.
And it was like, the whole second half was like if you said, okay, what's the one thing that can't happen here? That was what happened on every play. I mean, the Nate Pete fumble, what are we doing? And then right before Vanderbilt's only touchdown, I had literally told the guy next to me, I said, they're one missed tackle away from being really, really nervous in this game. Literally 80 yards. And I don't even blame the defense. It was the only bad play they made all night.
Yeah. The defense looked great. I mean, they've looked great most of the season. So we don't even honestly have to talk about them that much.
Defense good. Way to go.
Defense, yes, very good. Give them an A. But when that defender leaped over, I think Cody Schrader and just destroyed Cook. Oh man, that was bad.
And sometimes though, you also have to, and this is really hard to do as a sports fan, but sometimes you just got to say, you know what, man, good play. Like the one guy leaps over Schrader, the other guy comes through pretty much unblocked, and they killed Brady, and he dropped the ball, which I don't blame him for because, again, I'm amazed he's alive. But that was a good play. I mean, Drinkwood said after the game, I probably shouldn't call a pass on 3rd and 11 out of our own end. Fair, probably not. But they made a play there.
Yeah, you couldn't say much about the Missouri offense. I remember that touchdown so vividly because the Vanderbilt touchdown, because I was like, it was 3 or 4 missed tackles, and it's just like, oh, he's actually going to take this to the house, and you could tell pretty quickly that he was going to score a touchdown on it, and it wasn't like a spectacular route or a really great throw. It was just like, what was going on?
There were 2 guys that just took the wrong angle right away, and he cut inside, and then I don't think anybody touched.
There was nobody else there. Yeah.
No.
It was one of those deals. The kickoff also right in front of me, and I can just remember just seeing the ball just sitting on the turf. That was a wild experience too. Just on a kickoff, seeing the ball just laying on the turf and being like, "What's going on?"
For those of you that were not at the game, it was insanely windy.
It was very windy.
Like
It was.
all day. It was. I had a sundress on, and I'm like holding it down all day. I was like, this is a bad idea. But I mean, it was crazy, crazy windy. And I think if you watched Mevis's field goal, the missed field goal as well, you should hopefully have been able to tell that it was really windy out. It was like, yeah.
But this is all the problem of trying to play with an offense. Like, there is zero margin for error on this team. You can't have the missed field goal. You can't have the special teams mistake. You can't have, I mean, your defense literally has to be perfect. They've basically given up 1 touchdown to Florida, 1 to Vandy, 1 to Auburn. And they're 1-2 in those games. You know, there's zero margin for error. And if you just had an offense like 2015's offense, they didn't do anything to help win. They were awful. They scored like 9 points a game, right? But this offense in some ways is worse because they're actively doing things to hurt the team, to worsen the chances of winning with the turnovers and with just, like I said, just what can you not do here? Okay, let's go do that, guys. That's the plan. I'm sure it's not the plan, but
right. I like I mentioned at the top, but people were asking me about like the spread, and they're like, "Well, Mizzou's defense could score," and I was like, "Yeah, well, Mizzou's offense could also allow the other defense to score." Like that's also a very big possibility. So anytime when it comes to a Missouri spread, I'm not going to be incredibly optimistic about them even winning games, because if we look at the schedule that they have ahead, I mean, South Carolina, if we're still talking about bowl games, which I can't quit it, so I'm still going to talk about bowl games. The Birmingham Bowl, if they really want to get to that one, they have to beat South Carolina. That's a must win. And then they have to collect a win out of Kentucky, Arkansas, and I'm not even going to throw Tennessee in there. So they have to beat one of Kentucky or Arkansas and beat New Mexico State at the same time to get to 6-6. That looks like a steep uphill climb to me. The Kentucky game was just announced, I believe, the time 11 a.m. kickoff.
Yeah,
bad. Not great for that game. I was thinking about going to that one too, and then it was like an 11 a.m. kickoff, and I was like, I don't know if I want to wake up that early to watch this team, but So this is a big must-win game. I don't know if Drinkwitz. I had some people ask me about Drinkwitz's. He's like, is his seat get any cooler after this game? Debatably might have got warmer. Depends on how you want to view it. I think it might have. I don't think this has helped his case to stay in Columbia any longer. If he beats Tennessee, then we can have another conversation. But that's about it. I think the only thing that cools his seat down is if he does pull off a win against a team that he shouldn't beat. Which, let's be honest, Mizzou shouldn't beat any of the teams remaining on their schedule besides New Mexico State. Right.
But it is worth saying, like, I spent 3 weeks basically telling anybody that said, but we should be 5-1, that didn't count, and that was a bad thing to say, that bad teams say. So they did win this game. I mean, because, look, Vanderbilt's terrible, and nobody is engraving a 13th place trophy in the SEC for beating Vanderbilt by a field goal. But it's a hell of a lot better than the alternative, because the discussion we're having, if Missouri makes one less play in that game, it's ugly.
I was going to say, I was actually surprised. There was one drive, the last drive of the end of the first half, where we went down there and kicked a field goal.
Yeah.
I mean, it was promising at that point. I was like, hey, the offense may have turned around. I mean, it's Vandy, so they should be turning around. So, I mean, I don't know.
They turned back around.
They around. No, yeah, they did.
They went right back where they came from.
They do that.
Reverse card.
They'll look like an actual football team for a little bit, and you're like, wait a second, maybe we got something here. And then they stop looking like a football team, especially on the offensive side of the ball. Listen, I don't think that we should have to say that everything we're saying about this team is probably not directed towards the defense. It's 100% directed towards the offense. And that's kind of the frustrating part, I think, as Missouri fans. We get spoiled on the offensive side of the ball some. You know, we've had some pretty good offensive players through Columbia. Tyler Beatty last year being one of them. They've had a lot of good offensive players, especially on the offensive line. Had a lot of good offensive linemen. this probably isn't going to be considered the glory days of Missouri offensive line, which is tough. And that kind of goes into the point that I want to talk about next. There's a lot of people want Sam Horn out there. I'm saying, and I might be one of the biggest Sam Horn guys out there, because I think at the beginning, one of the first podcasts we did, I said, hey, maybe Sam Horn should be a quarterback. I threw that one out there. And I've been a big proponent for Sam Horn. I want to see him succeed. I don't think you're going to see him succeed if you put him out there in the situation that Missouri has now. You're going to put him in front of an offensive line that is porous at best, in front of an offensive line that is dealing with health concerns, and you don't want to diminish the confidence of Sam Horn any more than it could already by coming into camp late and then maybe not grasping the whole playbook, and having those issues as well. So I think the best case scenario is just to kind of let him feel out this season, and play when he's ready, when he's 100% ready, when he's confident, because confidence is a huge thing in college football. Confidence, momentum, those things are very big. But I'm curious to we talk about Sam Horn, I feel like, every single week. We talk about him playing in this game every single week, and they're like, oh, he could play this week, he could play that week, he could play against New Mexico. If they get up by 15 points and it's a full moon, he could play against Kentucky. It's stuff like that. And it's one of those things where you just got to kind of pump the brakes on him a little bit, I think.
But here's the difference between this week and every other week. Every other week, it's been us saying, yeah, he could play. Might see him this week. This week, it was the coaches. Like, they told the TV guys, Sam Horn is playing. I posted on Saturday morning, I expect to see Sam Horn. Dave Matter was told 3 series for Sam Horn. He was going, like they said, he's going to play. And then he didn't play. And I understand why he didn't, because I don't know what the appropriate time for him to play would have been. Like, Brady Cook had you up 14-0 in the second quarter. You don't yank him there. He leads a 2-minute drive. It's 17-0 at halftime. When do you put Sam in? And, oh, by the way, they were one bad play away from losing that game. So what if he puts Sam Horn in and Horn makes that one bad play? The mistake was telling people beforehand he was going to play, not playing him. Once that was said on the TV broadcast, there was an expectation that just didn't be met. I mean, I don't think Sam Horn fixes what's wrong with this offense, but I wouldn't be against playing him. It's fine if they decide. But my big thing is, they've had spring football, they've had all summer, they've had fall camp, and they've had 8 weeks of the season. And Sam Horn's the third string quarterback on this team. They obviously don't think he's ready to go out there, which kind of makes me wonder why he was going to play really on Saturday, but whatever. I don't know. What if Sam Horn's not Trevor Lawrence? I mean, I'm serious. Like, this is all based on, hey, we think Sam Horn's really good, and he might be, but I don't know. What proof is there of that?
I mean, he's likely not a Trevor Lawrence. I mean, I would love for him to be, but I'd love for him to lead us to a national championship in his freshman year, but we're obviously looking like that's not going to happen. So I don't know. I get what you're saying about the timing, because it's like you're leading 17-0, and then Brady actually doesn't look horrible. I remember looking at his stats at one point in the first half, and I was like, oh, like, his numbers look great. Like, why would you take him out at that point? He was 15 of 19 for 195 yards in the first half. He made one awful throw. Right. But just one. And it was awful. It was really bad. But, I mean, how do you take him out at that point? You can't. Right. So then you keep him in there playing, and then Vandy comes back, and then you can't put a freshman quarterback in when. So, yeah, the timing of it was just off. And, honestly, that's on our offense again, because if our offense plays well enough to get deep into the third quarter, Sam Horn gets a chance to play. But we had fumbles and interceptions, and we don't get kickoffs. And, I mean, it's not – you can't blame Drink for Sam Horn not being in the game. You can only blame our offense once again, who has to take the blame for everything these days, and I'm very sorry.
They really do. Yeah, I think that's kind of just a synopsis, kind of maybe a microcosm of the game. Is it like we expected a whole lot more, but then we expected to see Sam Horn, but then the offense didn't allow Sam Horn to get in. We expected to see a big win, but the offense didn't allow that. But let's turn the page. The game is frustrating. Hopefully, we can get a little bit of reprieve here as Mizzou travels to Columbia, South Carolina. They have is it called like the Governor's Cup or something like that? Governor's Trophy. They play for trophy rivalry here as they go take on the number 25 ranked South Carolina Gamecocks. Mizzou can get a win against a ranked team this year if they are able to beat South Carolina, coming off a big win against Texas A&M, which I don't know if you guys saw this play. Texas A&M, I can't remember who was in at quarterback at that point, but he like went up to the line to go like adjust something, and the center snapped it, went off his face mask, and a defensive lineman picked it off.
Yeah.
Just like, I think, I can't remember, it was like Mike Golick Jr., I think, quote, or tweeted out the video and said, God didn't want Texas A&M to win, which is kind of a scenario. It seems like that happens a lot in Mizzou games. It seems like God doesn't want Mizzou to win a lot of times.
You know what? Mizzou fans can look down to College Station and be like, could be worse.
Yeah,
we could have been number 5 in the country and had this season because they've had the exact same season. They're both 3-4. Neither one of them can score. Both fan bases want an offensive coordinator. At least it doesn't cost Missouri $85 million to make a move if they wanted to.
It's true. Mizzou also didn't have. Did Mizzou have? I was going to say something about the recruiting classes, but Mizzou might have had a better recruiting class than A&M. I don't remember.
No, A&M had number 1 in the country.
Yeah. Okay.
But Mizzou was number 12.
I think Texas A&M had the greatest recruiting class in the history of recruiting classes. I think based on stars or something like that. Like it was crazy. I'm sure their NIL numbers were.
How's that going?
That's right.
Yeah, it's not going well.
Well, Nick Saban, remember, was saying that he was paying a bunch of players millions of dollars, and they got in a little argument, a little spat at the beginning of the season. A little tiff. But yeah, this game, Spencer Rattler and the South Carolina Gamecocks pose a large threat for this Missouri Tigers team. What are your first thoughts? Their first kind of takeaways from this matchup, Gabe?
I mean, everybody poses a large threat right now to Missouri, right?
Yeah.
Like the first look is South Carolina they're okay. They don't scare you. It's a winnable game for Missouri, but here's the difference in where Missouri is and where South Carolina is. They have found ways to win games. Missouri largely hasn't. Now, Missouri did last week, and I keep going back and forth between like, hey, well, it's only Vandy. It doesn't count. Well, literally all you have to do is beat teams that aren't that good, and you're going to a bowl game, right? I beat 6 Vandys, and you're 4 Vandys and 2 like Vandy pluses, and you're going to a bowl game every year. So I don't want to completely take away credit for last week, but just Missouri hasn't shown me anything that tells me they can win again. Like, this is Auburn again. This is Florida again. South Carolina might be a little bit better than those teams because I think they have a little more confidence.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I mean, they beat Kentucky without Will Levis. They beat the most disappointing team in America. They've beaten bigger names than Missouri has, certainly. And it's there. I don't know if you guys have noticed Missouri tends to do poorly when the game is not at their own stadium. So
a little bit.
I don't know. I would not say that my confidence is at Shane Beamer levels in the Missouri football team right now.
We did win there a couple years ago.
Yeah,
I will say the 2020 season, we beat them 3 years in a row now. So I mean, it's not that we can't win this game. And we were talking about this before we went live. Spencer Rattler's not anything to write home about. He went 12 for 25 with 1 touchdown. Really, what happened when the South Carolina game was they ran off the opening kickoff, 100 yards. Then the next drive, I think they got a interception, and then one was a fumble recovery, and they were up. I think 17-0,
like 6 minutes.
I think it said like 5 minutes. So I mean, that's Texas A&M not being prepared, which, you know,
and that's what makes you worried. Like, yes, Texas A&M beat itself at South Carolina. Mm-hmm. What has Missouri done over and over this year?
Beat themselves. Absolutely beat themselves. 100%. Yeah, we can't go in there and dig a hole like Texas A&M did. We'll never get out of it. I mean, okay, I shouldn't say that because we got out of the Auburn hole and we got out of the Florida hole. So I shouldn't say that.
Not all the way, though.
Yeah, but not enough. I mean, not enough to push us over the edge. And I even put this down like on my notes. I was like, does beating Vandy even count as, because we kept talking about we need the dam to break. And I'm like, then we didn't even break the dam. like that's what we wanted. We needed that win. And then it's just like, I can't even count it.
Yeah.
Like I count it as a win, but I can't count it as the dam breaking.
Right.
It's not a moral victory. It's a victory, but not a moral one. I was just looking up over here.
Moral losses should be a thing.
It's a moral loss. Missouri at South Carolina. Looking at kind of our friends at DraftKings have the odds out. That's a 5-point favorite for the South Carolina Gamecocks. Personally, I think it should probably be a little bit more.
But like Missouri plays close games.
They do.
I mean, there's no reason to expect Missouri to get blown out in this game.
Right.
They've played everybody in the SEC close, so I can understand why the line what it is.
I'm expecting it to be some weird game because you think about Texas or you think about South Carolina. I think about the monsoon we had. I think of last year when we were up 3 touchdowns. I think we won by 3 or something ridiculous. The field goal, obviously, that everybody knows the Baggett field goal. So, I mean, I expect it to be some weird, like someone wins by a safety or something. Like, that's just how I expect South Carolina games to go. And of course, it'll probably be a safety against us. So.
Put it out there now.
We'll just have a picture of Brady Cook laying in the end zone.
Yep. It is going to be a weird game. There's only weird games played. South Carolina, Mizzou. I think they have to win this game if they want any shot at making a bowl game, right? A lot of people have given up on the bowl game. I'm still on bowl game watch. Like, hey, it's like the Charlie gif from Always Sunny where he's got about the mail. He's got all this stuff. That's me with bowl game scenarios. So it's like if this team loses right here and then Mizzou has to win this right here. Yeah. So that's what I'm doing all the time.
I did see Brett McMurphy tweet out this morning there could be a record number of losing teams who are invited to a bowl game this year.
Huge for Mizzou. That's an absolute
I can't see them looking at Mizzou and being like, this is a team that we want to be in a bowl.
No, but once you get to 5 and 7, it's like about APR.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about what they want. It's like the Little Caesars Bowl just takes the best APR team or whatever.
Ooh, Little Caesars Bowl. That could be a travel one. That's got to be in like Detroit, right?
Yeah, nothing. It's 100% in Detroit. It's not the Little Caesars Bowl anymore, but that's where it is.
I'll have to look up what Mizzou's APR is. But I think that so it feels like every single week, I was just thinking about this. It feels like every single week, this is the biggest game of Eli Drinkwitz's tenure at Mizzou, right? Like, let's be honest, the Vanderbilt game was kind of a big game for him. If he lost that game, that was a big game. I don't think that this South Carolina game, win or lose, is going to swing so much of that momentum in one way. A South Carolina win is not going to say, all right, re-sign Drink for 5 more years. And a loss isn't going to cut him immediately. So that's good about this game. As we can look at the positive side of that, it's good. Hopefully we get to see a little bit more Luther Burden. I enjoyed seeing Luther Burden in space on Saturday. I enjoyed to see those athletes do some athletic things.
A bunch of people asked like why he didn't touch the ball in the second half, and I'm curious why the Wildcat has gone in the pantry or whatever. But also understand Missouri threw 6 passes in the second half. Luther Burden and Dominic Lovett largely, like I've looked at the snap counts, about 70% of their snaps are pass plays. They are not on the field when Missouri is running the ball because, I assume because they aren't as good at blocking as Mookie Cooper, Barrett Bannister, Towski Dove, maybe Mekhi Miller. So that's why he didn't get the ball. And again, yes, you should probably try to get him the ball a little bit more, especially when he does what he did in the first half. But that's the explanation for it. But like you're talking about this game, I mean, I hate that we're here in week 7, but it just feels like it's about next year now. Like, and yeah, they may get to 6 and 6, but even at 6 and 6, I feel like most of the fan base is still going to go into next year going, well, I still don't really know. I still didn't learn anything. I don't know enough to say I'm optimistic about the future. And that was worst case scenario for this year is just and it's why we'd like to see Sam Horn. You'd like to have something to hang your hat on to say, hey, I see it. I see the progress. Like maybe not even in the win-loss record, but there's hope. I just feel like Missouri's fans right now, and I over the years have gotten the reputation for the guy that craps on Missouri fans. Kudos to you guys and all 60,000 people. You showed up for freaking Vanderbilt for one of the worst games I've ever sat through in my entire life on Saturday. Like this team has given fans almost no reason to show up, and they did. And I truly think Missouri deserves credit and the athletic department deserves credit for whatever they've done to make that happen. But I just think there's a whole bunch of fans out there going, like, do something to make me want to come back. And I don't know what they've done yet.
I think a lot of it has to do with now with NIL and the ability to leave so easily in the transfer portal. Like, I think a lot of those people that are saying, I don't have a reason to come are the people that are sitting at home. And I think that the people that are there are like, we need to show this team that we're supporting them through this hard year so that they want to come back for a good year. Like, I honestly believe that. And I mean, I've talked to so many fans that are like, we can't give up on our team like you see people do, because if we pull the Missouri fans who have done that throughout the years, these guys are just going to leave. And who would blame them? You know, you have to give them a reason to want to be there. And playing in an environment like the Georgia game is going to give players a reason to want to be there.
But you have to give the fans a reason to want to be there.
I don't disagree with that.
And what did Saturday do to give fans a reason to want to come? I'm being serious. Like, it is on. I think it sucks for a college sports fan that they're the ones that get the blame if the team isn't good. Well, maybe if you would show up. Maybe if you would pay our players. Yeah, we made $180 trillion last year, but that's not enough. We can't pay them. You have to pay them. And it's your fault if Luther Burden transfers, and it's your fault if this kid goes somewhere else. No, the team has to do something to convince the fans that that's worth their time. You know, I mean, Tennessee fans, and I understand they were 5-0 and all that, but their team, that scene in Knoxville a couple weeks ago, there are going to be people talking about that in 40 years. I remember that night. That's a reason. Missouri fans need that reason because they haven't gotten it for 8 years. And that's not their fault. I mean, there were more people there, honestly, than should have been there on Saturday. And I think, like, I'm not gonna crap on Missouri fans the rest of this year. And they lose people to NIL or whatever, put a better team out there. That's not the fans' fault.
And I would agree with that. As someone, you know, Maggie, you're driving 2 hours to games. I'm driving 2 hours to games. It's in the middle of the major markets of the city. Especially being on this side of Missouri, there's a lot more Kansas fans on the Kansas City side of things, and their team has given them a reason to show up to games. Right, to the Kansas fans' credit, people on this podcast aren't gonna like to hear that they weren't showing up a whole lot, and once their team did good, they did show up and they supported that team.
And Missouri fans will too.
They will
if they get good, but
they have to do something.
Yes,
yeah.
They do, and that's kind of the most frustrating part. Is I want to support them,
and the disappointing part is 6-6 isn't that. Like, even if it's 3 more, I guess that'd be 3 more wins. All right, I mean that's kind of the bare minimum expectation.
I mean, it's what we did last year, so we're not improving.
Right, right.
Saying pretty
standard. Yeah, and it just goes back through. I feel like, I mean, it's back to Sam Horn. It's unfair to the kid. I think so much of this program and the future of what happens here is on him next year.
Yeah, and it's not going to be good unless they don't get 7 new offensive linemen in the transfer portal either. They have to completely revamp their offensive line room. I don't think it's any fault of the coaching staff. Maybe it is. I don't know. But I think that they need some talent rehaul in that offensive line department if you're going to feel comfortable trotting out your quote-unquote franchise quarterback out there to try to make a difference in this university's trajectory of where this program's heading, because it's not heading, let's be honest, it's not heading in the best spot right now. It's not trending in the right direction, I don't think.
There are ways to scheme around an offensive line. Mike Leach did
That's
it for
true.
a long time. I mean, I remember when Josh Heupel got to Missouri, like basically he was doing things under the premise that I don't have any offensive tackles. Like I've got to scheme something to not get my quarterback killed. And I don't think that's a change you can make in week 8, but it might have to be a change you make before next year.
Yeah, I think it'll be also important as well to keep those wide receivers in the room, because Sam's not going to be successful if he's not throwing to talent. I mean, you look at all the years that Mizzou has been great and look at their wide receivers. I mean, they're not going to be able to win games, regardless if they have a good quarterback or not. They're not going to be able to win games without a talented core.
And I want to say, like, and I said this on our site last week, my concern level that Luther Burden is going to play anywhere but Missouri next year is very low.
Right.
I have very, very high expectations that he is going to play his college football at Missouri and only at Missouri.
He tweeted after the game.
Yeah, it was a cool
place.
picture. It was a cool picture. Yeah, no, I retweeted. I'm like, we love you too. But like you saw like a couple weeks ago, I think after the Georgia game, I think his grandmother was in town and he posted some photos, and that's exactly why he's here. He's got a large family. His family is close. His grandmother probably. I mean, it is part of it. We know what the other part is. Come on.
I mean, again, kudos to the fans, right? There you go.
Right.
That's what we're talking about.
Exactly. No, exactly. There's reasons he's here.
Buy the potato chips.
Yeah, but everybody is. I see them everywhere. Everyone's posting them. So,
yeah, I'm anxious about what the rest of the year holds. I'm excited to see this Missouri game versus South Carolina. I don't know if I should be excited. It's kind of a fool's errand at this point to get excited for a Missouri football game, but nevertheless, I find myself doing it every single week. Maybe instead of predicting the score, we should just pick against the spread. Mizzou 5 points. What do you think, Gabe? I don't know if your employer condones gambling or not, but
I mean, we pick games every week against the spread. I've done it very poorly for Missouri this year. But no, I would not pick this team to cover on the road in this game. I mean, everything I've seen tells me they play hard and make one mistake that's going to get them beat.
Yeah, I agree. I think at the closest, it's a touchdown. I don't see it being one of us wins by a field goal. I think it'll be similar to the Florida game. Like if we were going to pick scores, I was going to be like 24-17. Or
Missouri is going to be somewhere between 14 and 17. At this point, that's the bet, right?
Yeah. Yeah, we outdid ourselves against Georgia.
That's the sweet spot.
It's how many touchdowns does the defense scores, the variable there. What really it's going to be, but I'm going to side with you guys. I think that I'm going to take South Carolina minus the 5. It seems like this has a touchdown game written all over it at least, but yeah, I think that's going to do it for this week's edition of Mizzou That's Who. I hope we installed a lot of confidence.
Everybody feels so much better than they did when they started listening.
Yeah.
They turned off like 30 minutes.
They're like, I don't know who these idiots are, but this was awful. I feel terrible about myself.
I was supposed to feel good about this team. Now I feel worse. Just wait till basketball season. All right. So next week we'll be back talking about Kentucky. Hopefully Will Levis is out again. That's the only shot that Mizzou will have in Kentucky. There's your early preview. All right, that's enough for this podcast. Thank you guys all for tuning in, listening all the way to the very end. We'll talk to you next week.